Welcome to Contemporary First Nations Voices, NBE 3C. This is grade 11 English, college level, and this is Gillian Percy teaching. This is class 3. We're going to be working on key question 4, as well as 5 and 6, hopefully, maybe 7, but I'm not going to put it there because I don't think we're going to get that far. We'll see how it goes. You never know sometimes, right? Okay. Here are all the ways to contact me if you're trying to reach me. If you're looking to contact me while I'm on air, then you call the studio, 1-800-465-7144. If you want to talk to me while I'm not on the air, then you call the office, 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. My email is jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. I also can be reached on Facebook, capital G, capital P-E-R-C-Y, space, capital W-A-H-S-A. Now, if you are trying to reach me by Facebook, please be aware I do not check it every day unless I see a message, because I don't have a lot of students that message me that way. So if you do that, if you like make a little friend request, also send a message like, hi, I'm Lisa so-and-so, I'm in NBE 3 or 3C, so that I know who you are and which class you're in, because I have about 4 different classes. So that way I know kind of very quickly what to look for, right? You can also watch previous classes on 2 different channels. On YouTube, there is a G. Percy Wassett channel, and there is an NBE 3C playlist that you can pick up. And then there's also a school channel called the WASA Distance Education YouTube channel, and that will also have a playlist that you can go into and pick up some of the previous classes. Okay, how to hand in work. If you are handing in assignments by photograph, whenever you take a photograph of an assignment, please make sure that your photograph is nice and clear so that your writing can be read. Also, you want to be facing the assignment straight on. Don't be at an angle, because then the writing is kind of very hard for me to read. Prefer that you use pen rather than pencil. Pencil doesn't always show up. Please don't just hit the share button on the photo if you're using the email. When you do that, the picture comes up at this very strange size, and it can be hard to shrink down and put into a printable document. Instead, save the photo to your phone and then write me an email and send the photo along as an attachment rather than in the body of the email. Whenever you hand in work, please send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. You can include me in the email if you want to. When you do this, the secretary can log that you submitted the work as well. That keeps your work accessible to other teachers if the assignments were to change or I got sick or whatever happens, right? If you send it only to my email, then no one else can see it but me. Please always put your full name, the course name, the assignment number, and the name on what you send. Not just in the email, but physically on the page, because it gets printed off and then that's what I see. So there's no name, no course number. I have to just kind of randomly guess and hope that I'm guessing right, okay? If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft of a writing assignment usually, please label which one is which and include them both in the same email, because I generally check between the 2 of them to see if you've made revisions. Okay, as we're talking about, this is our plan for the week. Today, I think we might get through 4, 5, and 6. We'll just kind of see. Still getting the hang of this course because it's kind of new. And then we'll see what we get to tomorrow. Okay. So yesterday we did lesson 1. Today we've moved on to lesson 2, which is talking about names and stereotypes. Goals. In many ways, it is our experiences that shape who we are. Our identity gets wrapped up in this. In this lesson, you will read about identities and try to determine how history can impact that identity. You will examine the structure of the information paragraph, and then we'll write 3 of them. We'll see how we get that. That might be tomorrow. Okay, so key question number 4, part 1, 7 marks. Using the internet, read information about Emily Pauline Johnson. In point form, create a list of 5 things you've learned about her life and her notoriety. Include 2 websites where you found information. I'm going to change. I would not say in point form, please in sentence form. Point form tends to be too brief, I find. Okay. Okay. Hang on a second. Okay, so in your notebook, there'll be this little organizer for your research. There's a box for each of the 5 points, and there's a spot for each of your 2 internet resources, okay? So here is a picture of Emily Pauline Johnson. And when I went to do a search, here are some of the things that came up. Now, remember the other day we talked about Wikipedia and how Wikipedia is not the best source because it can be altered, it can be hoaxed. It's better to use more reliable resources. So here are some: Canadian Encyclopedia, Poetry Foundation, Canadian Geographic. So we're going to take a look at that just to kind of see what kind of information we can find out about her. Okay. So the other thing we talked about was that different types of websites will give you a different perspective on a person. So Emily Pauline Johnson, here they were talking mostly about her poetry, because that's what they cared about. Born and raised on Six Nations Reserve near Brantford, Ontario, poet and performer Emily Pauline Johnson was the daughter of a Mohawk chief and his English wife. She was educated mainly at home, studying both English literature and Mohawk oral history and legend. It's a longer article, there's more there, and if you can't see it over here, but if you clicked over to the side, they'd have a few samples of some of her other poems that you could read as well. And then there's an article from Canadian Geographic, which is generally considered a pretty reliable resource. The true story of Pauline Johnson, poet, provocateur, and champion of Indigenous rights. The daughter of a hereditary Mohawk chief and an English immigrant, Johnson used her hard-won celebrity to challenge Indigenous stereotypes by Charlotte Gray. So here's some pictures of her, and there's a Canadian stamp of her, which is kind of cool. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but just to kind of show you, this is so much more detailed than the very little bit that they had on poetry. Also, here they're going a lot more into like her heritage and assessing things. So here's an example. Pauline Johnson was Canada's first performance artist. I don't know if it's actually true, but she was very popular. In the 1890s, she crisscrossed the continent 19 times using the newly built Canadian Pacific Railway, captivating audiences with her poetry in elegant drawing rooms and in the whistle-stop towns that dotted the growing country. Today, when I look at the buckskin dress she wore while forging her career, it is hard to know whether to rhapsodize about the poet's creativity or to theorize about post-colonial constructs. The outfit is both sexy and symbol-laden, seductive and misleading. Inauthentic when she pieced it together over a century ago, in 2017, it is a provocative museum artifact. In the light of revelations about the way Indigenous peoples have been treated in our history, its optimistic blurring of identities makes me cringe. And then they begin to go into a bunch of details about her career. So if you were looking at this, you would not want to use every single thing because there's just way too much here, obviously. You'd want to pick out what parts you were kind of thought were the most interesting, okay? Going back. And okay, hang on. So what are some of the similarities are? Okay, well, I mean, obviously, hang on. They are both interested in her poetry, both aware of her heritage, both admire her as a Canadian writer. Okay. There's a lot more differences, really. So differences, hang on a second. Oh, no, I don't want draw. Hang on a second. Okay, so some differences might be. Poetry Foundation is a very short article with links to other poetry. Canadian Geographic article is very long and more concerned with the history of Indigenous peoples and examining her fame in relationship to that. I would also say the other thing, examining, sorry. I would also say the other thing is that the poetry foundation one is pretty, I would say is pretty neutral, right? Where I would say the CG, I'm just going to call it CG, Canadian Geographic article, is a little more kind of almost, I don't want to say negative exactly. It's not neutral though, is not neutral. Maybe, and is willing to be critical, I guess. Right? I don't mean that in a negative way, but like is willing to examine her and analyze her efforts. Always hard to kind of think as you're writing. My goodness, my spelling when I'm trying to write quickly goes terrible. My apologies. There we go. So they both would have useful aspects. I would probably want to hunt around and see if there were a few more, if there was anything that was more useful or approach things from a different side, but that's two different possibilities of places you can look. Okay, so in our book, there is a long poem called The Cattle Thief. Oh, by the way, Pauline Johnson, she also had a First Nations name, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing this right, Tekahiwanwake, because she liked to be known, she preferred to be known as that, but she had the English's name as well. She was kind of in the difficult situation, especially back then, of sort of belonging to both worlds. So I'm going to read the poem because I know a lot of people have difficulty with poetry, and then we'll kind of discuss it and look at the questions that are about it. So the cattle thief. They were coming across the prairie. They were galloping hard and fast, for the eyes of those desperate riders had sighted their man at last. Sighted him off to eastward, where the Cree encampment lay, where the cottonwoods fringed the river, miles and miles away. Mistake him never. Mistake him, the famous Eagle Chief, that terror to all the settlers, that desperate cattle thief, that monstrous, fearless Indian who lorded it over the plain, who thieved and raided and scouted, who rode like a hurricane. But they've tracked him across the prairie, they've followed him hard and fast, for those desperate English settlers have sighted their man at last. Up they wheeled to the teepees, all their British blood aflame, bent on bullets and bloodshed, bent on bringing down their game. But they searched in vain for the cattle thief. That lion had left his lair, and they cursed like a troop of demons, for the women alone were there. The sneaking Indian coward, they hissed. He hides while yet he can. He'll come in the night for cattle, but he's scared to face a man. Never! And up from the cottonwoods rang the voice of the Eagle Chief, and right out into the open stepped, unarmed, the cattle thief. Was that the game they had coveted? Scarce 50 years had rolled over that fleshless, hungry frame, starved to the bone and old, over that wrinkled, tawny skin, unfed by the warmth of blood, over those hungry, hollow eyes that glared for the sight of food. He turned like a hunted lion. I know not fear, said he, and the words outleapt from his shrunken lips in the language of the Cree. I'll fight you, whiteskins, one by one till I kill you all, he said. But the threat was scarcely uttered ere a dozen balls of lead whizzed through the air about him like a shower of metal rain, and the gaunt old Indian cattle thief dropped dead on the open plain. And that band of cursing settlers gave one triumphant yell and rushed like a pack of demons on the body that writhed and fell. Cut the fiend up into inches, throw his carcass on the plain. Let the wolves eat the cursed Indian, he'd have treated us the same. A dozen hands responded, a dozen knives gleamed high, but the first stroke was arrested by a woman's strange, wild cry. And out into the open, with a courage past belief, she dashed and spread her blanket over the corpse of the cattle thief, and the words outleapt from her shrunken lips in the language of the Cree, if you mean to touch that body, you must cut your way through me. And that band of cursing settlers dropped backward one by one, for they knew that an Indian woman roused was a woman to let alone. And then she raved in a frenzy that they scarcely understood, raved of the wrongs she had suffered since her earliest babyhood. Stand back, you whiteskins. Touch that dead man to your shame. You have stolen my father's spirit, but his body I only claim. You have killed him, but you shall not dare to touch him now he's dead. You have cursed and called him a cattle thief, though you robbed him first of bread. Robbed him and robbed my people. Look there at that shrunken face. Starved with a hollow hunger we owe to you and your race. What have you left to us of land? What have you left of game? What have you brought but evil and curses since you came? How have you paid us for our game? How paid us for our land? By a book to save our souls from the sins you brought in your other hand? Go back with your new religion. We never have understood. You're robbing an Indian's body and mocking his soul with food. Go back with your new religion and find, if find you can, the honest man you've ever made from out a starving man. You say your cattle are not ours. Your meat is not our meat. When you pay for the land you live in, we'll pay for the meat we eat. Give back our land and our country. Give back our herds of game. Give back the furs and the forests that were ours before you came. Give back the peace and the plenty. Then come with your new belief and blame, if you dare, the hunger that drove him to be a thief. Okay, so I know not a very politically correct version, which we talked about at the beginning of this course, because this is historical stuff that we're sometimes using. It's not always going to be using the more appropriate words that we would use these days, okay? So key question number 4, part 2, who is being chased by the desperate riders in stanza 1? Who is doing the chasing? And what crime has allegedly been committed? So a stanza in poetry is kind of like a paragraph in stories. So it's the kind of the whole group. I think it's easier to show here. See how there's a space and then a space? So this whole chunk is a stanza, okay? And it's a group of lines, because we don't talk about paragraphs in poetry. We talk about stanzas. Who's doing the chasing? What crime has allegedly been committed? So allegedly means, what are they saying has been done? So if we go back, now it talks about they, okay? But later on, it talks about some other words that give you some clues as to who the they is, all right? Number 2, what insult is hurled by the men when they do not find the man they are seeking? What immediate physical response does this insult receive? So this is right away. They start calling names and then something happens right away. What names do they call and what immediately happens? That's 2 marks. Number 3, how do the white men intend to treat the dead man's body? They talk very clearly about what they're planning to do. Number 4, why do the men back away from the woman according to the poem? What does the poem say? Who is the woman? How does she justify the dead man's so-called crimes? In other words, why does she say the crimes don't really count as crimes? Why are they okay? And what accusation does she make towards the group of men? So that's 4 marks, 1 for each question there. Number 5, how does the poet create an impression of the English settlers' natures through her physical description of them? So she talks about them in a way that kind of gives you an idea of what she thinks of their heart or their personality. Okay, so let me kind of take a look. Yeah, they talk a little, think about in here a little bit. They talk about things. Yeah. Yeah, there's a word that she keeps using over and over again. So if you look for that word, you'll have an idea of what she thinks of them, and it's not a positive thought at all. Number 6, how is the eventual appearance of Eagle Chief ironic, considering the image of him created initially in the poem? So ironic is when something, it doesn't quite match um, uh, its original image in this sense, is what they're looking at, right? There's something that's a contrast from what they originally were portraying him as. Number 7, what is the significance of the Eagle Chief's physical appearance to the theme of the entire poem? So not what they thought he looked like, but what he actually looks like, okay? And why? Why does he look like that, basically? What's going on? Um, oh, hang on a second. Oh, I'm sorry. Sometimes what happens is it renumbers things when I separate them. I forget that happens sometimes. My apologies. Okay, number 10, and number 8. Johnson emphasizes that both Eagle Chief and the woman speak to the English settlers in the language of the Cree. What does this information add to your understanding of the poem's plot and its theme? So plot is the series of events, and theme would be like its overall message, okay? Number 9, explain the meaning of the lines, "How have you paid us for our land by a book?" Clarify the illusion. What is she referring to here? And how does she further develop that idea throughout the final lines of the poem? So in other words, what book are they talking about? Okay. And how is she talking about how that, how it affected how they dealt with the First Nations people? Number 10, explain how the Eagle Chief's daughter asserts her own identity and sovereignty. Now, we've been talking a lot about identity. Hang on a second. I'm going to just slide this up a little second. Okay. So identity, remember, is basically how you define yourself. Okay. Sovereignty is a little trickier. We actually talk some more about sovereignty. I'm surprised they bring it up here, but we do talk about it very soon. Sovereignty is basically the right to self-governance, to be in charge of yourself, to be in charge of your own country, that kind of idea. So how does what she's talking about, how does that relate to the idea of how she thinks of herself, how she defines herself, and the First Nation right to self-governance? Okay, so she kind of talks on both those ideas. Okay, moving on. Key question number 5. Now, in some people's versions of this, these questions are there, but for some reason, no marks were assigned. So I'm assigning marks to this. I'm renaming it key question number 5. I think before it was just considered like a support question, but it didn't say that. So I think that was confusing to people. So you're going to go to page 38 in the textbook Strength and Struggle, and you're going to read the text called "I Am My Grandmother" by Nadia McLaren. And after you look at that, you're going to read the following questions and answer them in complete sentences. We're going to talk about them right now anyways. Who is Nadia McLaren, and why did she create this journal? Number 2, do you think that the use of the photographs is effective at conveying the author's message? Give a specific example of a photograph that you think is good at conveying the author's message. Number 3, how do you think the grandmother would feel if she read this granddaughter's journal? And what words in the text make you think that? That's another 3 marks. Now, I am going to put a trigger warning. This graphic journal does deal with the topic of residential school and abuse, so please be aware of this as you read it. If you find it triggering and it brings back unwelcome memories, please reach out to those around you for help. Mental health workers in your community, the nursing station, family, friends, 911, or phone crisis lines. People can access emotional and crisis referral services by calling the 24-hour service at 1-866-925-4419. They deal specifically with people who experienced residential school or who are children and grandchildren of people who were at residential school. So if that is an issue, especially if it comes up kind of relating to this journal, then please reach out and ask for help, okay? Okay, so the book is calling this a graphic journal. I would actually call this more of a photo essay, but they're very similar ideas. Basically, it combines photographs with text to create an overall unified story. And up here it says, I am my grandmother. I am my grandmother. All her words, laughter, and tears are inside me forever. This is my granny. When I close my eyes, these are the pictures I see. This is the way I remember and cherish her. So for those who are kind of out in the radio land, there's a picture of a young woman up top, right next to where it says, I am my grandmother. And then there's some somewhat blurry pictures of a First Nations woman at slightly different ages. And then there's a lovely little picture of her sitting. It looks like she's sitting maybe next to a boat. I'm not sure if it's a boat or if it's supposed to be a trailer, but it looks like a boat to me. All right. And then now this page was originally together, but then it was kind of hard to see. So I split it apart so I could make the words bigger enough to read. So there's 4 pictures at the top. A picture looks like I'm not sure if it's, I'm gonna guess maybe the mom and the grandmother, or it could be the grandma with her grandmother. A picture of the land, a lovely little picture with like a photograph over a portion of the reserve. Kind of a blurry picture that I'm pretty sure is a moose there. And then down below, there's a picture of some plants, some sort of pine. I split the page apart. Yep. Granny was an Ojibwe from a place on the north shore of the Great Lake Superior called Heron Bay, Pick River Reservation. She was my greatest gift. I am one of many grandchildren, and I wonder if my cousins feel it too. The restlessness of an ancient sadness. Now she's quoting something there, and I'm not actually sure what she's quoting. I am afraid of days when I could barely see. I am reminded of days when I could barely see over the kitchen table she sat at, when I stared beyond the bottles of booze and watched her cry. She spoke of her childhood, and she said her mother died when she was 4. She spoke of a place called residential school, where she was abused in ways I can't bear to imagine. Then she never spoke of it again. Now these pictures are much more blurry. There's kind of an ominous one at the end that's quite dark. You can see almost nothing in there. There is more to these pages, but I don't want to disrespect her copyright. I don't want to, give the entire graphic journal here, although it's very interesting. I strongly encourage you to take a look at it and read it before you try to answer those questions, okay? And then this seemed like a really good time for us to try and create our own graphic journal, because we're also talking about the idea of our identity, right? So for this assignment, study the graphic journal above to get an idea of the format, and you're going to create your own graphic journal. You can choose to compare yourself to a relative like they did in this journal, or you could choose to write and photograph about your identity in a different way. Your graphic journal should be at least 2 pages long. Hers is much longer, but we're just students. I'm only asking for 2 pages. It should include at least 6 to 8 photographs of different people, places, objects, or activities that connect to your overall topic. It also needs to have some text is words, explaining the photos and how they relate to the message that you're trying to convey. There should be at least 75 to maybe 150 words of text in your journal, right? You can see with hers, I'll show you, there's times where it's just a little bit of text. There's times when there's more text. It really kind of depends. So as you're writing, I'm not I just want you to be doing only a sentence per page. So think about what you want to write. Okay. Now, how are you going to do this? Well, you can do it different ways. You can use Google Docs, you can use Word, you can use Google Slides, you can use PowerPoint. You could even be hand-drawn if you prefer. I know I've got some people who are very artistic and could probably do a gorgeous job. If you watch class number 3, I do walk you through how to use some of those programs. Class number 3, actually, I think it was class number 1. Cost number one. I am going to go through them a little bit today. I'm going to be marking by looking at how well the text and the images work together to help convey your message about your identity. Something to think about when you're putting this together: what color do you want the background text to be? Do you want page borders? Do you want a border around the photos? How do you want to group the photos? Do you want the photos to overlap? Do you want any other images on the page? Like, for example, for her, she also had like a little scrapbook page here with a little pin on it of a bird. How are you going to balance the look of the text and the photos? What message do you want to send about your identity with your words? And then the moment you're thinking about words, what font do you want for the journal? Do you want to use more than one font? What color should the font be? So font is just the style of words, right? And almost any word processing program allows you to change the font, right? Some of them might make more sense than others. Maybe you want it to look more like handwriting. Maybe you want it to look more old. Maybe you want it to look more like cursive. It's entirely up to you what you want, okay? But it is something to think about. This was a funny one. Hang on. Well, we're going to leave it for that way, the moment. Okay, using Google Docs and slides. So I'm going to do a quick review of it. You can use Google Docs, but me personally, it would not be my first choice for doing this journal. But I do know some people are very familiar with Google Docs and not really familiar with other ones, so they would probably choose to do that. And if that's how you feel, that's totally fine, okay? I would probably choose Google Slides instead. It's much more image friendly. It's way easier to move the photos around and such. It's got all sorts of color options and little images to play with. I think it'd be much easier to work with that. Having said that, you can follow the exact same steps that you follow to get to Google Docs to get to Google Slides. The Google Slides icon looks like that little yellow rectangle with the word slides underneath. Okay, and you do the exact same thing no matter which one you want to use. You log into your student Gmail account by entering your username and your password. Then you'll see a screen that looks like this. Yours will have a different initial, probably a different color. I've got like 5 different, they're all different colors. When you click on that, then the drop-down menu will come up, and here's Docs. Here is Slides on this one. Some of them, the Slides is down. There's another drop-down menu. There's a little, I don't know if you see it, kind of a very light gray bar. If you pull that gray bar down, you'll see Slides, because the apps kind of move around depending on how much you use them. So this is where the apps are for me, because those are apps I use all the time. But if you don't use them very much, then they might be down below, okay? Suck. Then this screen will come up and you just want to select a blank document. And then I'll show you how to do it in Slides, okay? Once you do this, you're also going to want to, after you're finished, download it, save a copy. Now, I originally said a Word file, but for this, you could save it as like a picture file or a PDF. PDF might work really well. And then email it to me as an attachment, okay? Yeah, same thing. So download Microsoft Word. So PDF would work. I don't really think you want the other ones. PDF, I think, probably would work better for this, but you could also do Microsoft Word. I find Microsoft Word is horrible for doing images, though. I have used it, but it's very frustrating because it has all these kind of funny rules about where it's going to go. And if you're not really familiar with the program, you can get very frustrated because you can be dragging something and it just won't go where you want it to go. Okay. Now, using Google Slides, same thing. Go to Slides, click on that, and the same kind of screen will come up. This time it's a blank presentation form. I'm going to kind of, let me see if I can get this to come up. I made a little document just kind of show you so we can play around with it a bit. Oh, now why is it doing that? Hang on, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so Google Slides came up, and you end up with a screen that looks like this. Now, this is designed for like a smart board, okay? So a lot of people, if you're going to hand it in to me, it will work this way, but you can also switch it to being the same size as an 8 by 5 by 11, which works really well if you're planning to mail it or print it off. And it does work really well on my end too. Before you do anything else, before you write anything, before you do any kind of images, change the page setup right away. If you don't, once you add things, it will do weird things. It'll squash them, stretch them, and it's super frustrating. But as long as you do the page setup right away, then you're fine. So if you go up to File and you click on it, and then you go down to Page Setup and you click on that, and then this is what comes up. And you see it says widescreen. You don't want widescreen. If you go to custom, now normally mine comes up in inches because that's all I ever use, okay? If you want it landscape, you could say 11 by 8 by 5. But if you want it the typical way, the portrait style, 8.5 by 11, you could also do pixels, but I don't understand pixels well enough to use it, so I don't use pixels. And now I apply it. Okay, so you see what I mean in terms of it changed everything. So if you'd already done a bunch of work to make your work look beautiful, that would be so frustrating, okay? Then you can also add new slides. If you go up to slide, you can add new slides. This is just kind of, it gives you a spot for a title and things. If you don't like it, just click on it and cut it, right? That's almost always what I do. And you can add however many slides you wanted to, okay? Now, there are so many things that you can do. I'm going to walk you through this real quick because I don't think everybody's used this. Oh my gosh, look at the time. Okay, so I can change the background color. White's kind of boring. I might not want it. Hit background, pick colors. I can grab colors here. I can make a custom color. I can pick gradient colors, which I don't think I really want, but I could. So I'm just going to pull up any color here. Maybe I want this color. Okay, you could also choose an image. I probably wouldn't for this, but sometimes people will do that and make it very, very light. But I wouldn't do that for this. And then and I've got my background color. Now I can change my font style or color. So I go on here and then I could, hang on. Here is the style. And they try and show you what they're going to look like. So let's say I wanted a really fat style. That's the Titan one. I can change the color by going over to the A and picking a different color. And I can change the size just by clicking here, making it bigger, making it smaller. Okay. Her format, you saw there was like little text boxes all over the screen. That is easy enough to do with Google Slides as well. You just go hit Insert, Text Box, and then just make yourself a little text box. And that way you could have like a photo here and then your little text box here. Now, if you don't put anything in there, it will generally kind of fade. If I want it to have like a little hard edge, go up to the border, decide how thick a border you want it. 2 or 3 is usually fine. I could pick a different color. Let's say I wanted maybe a nice deep brown instead. Okay. I can add photos. You can physically take a picture with your snip and save. You can also go up here, insert image, and it will take things that are already on the computer. Now, you could take things on the web, but this is supposed to be a personal photo essay, so it really makes more sense to do your own photos critic. I'm not looking for the photographic quality. Like you could see from the one that we studied, the photographic quality was not necessarily great, but that actually made it richer because it gave you more of a sense of the age of the photographs. So I'm looking for how you're illustrating your ideas. I'm not a photography teacher. I'm not marking your photography skills. So don't worry about that part, okay? So you can add more pages to show that. You can use the templates. Does the templates show up? Hang on a second. Themes? Themes. Sometimes they say templates, sometimes they say themes. I'm not really crazy about these because they have all these things that I would want to take off. So I would just stick to this one, but some people might want that. You never know. Anyways, play around with it till you have it. Then you need to save your work. This is really important because I can't easily see this. So what you'd want to do is go to your file and then go to download first. Now, you could save it as a Microsoft PowerPoint, but you don't need to. You could easily save it as a PDF. Don't save it as plain text because that's going to mess up all your photographs. So if I save it as a PDF document, okay, so on mine, it came up there. And then, okay, I'm just going to kind of open it up. Oh, it's Adobe. You never know. Adobe's tricky sometimes, right? Okay, so here you go. And then what you would do is you send me an email and it will send this to me. Okay, so that is a great way to do this. No. All right. Sorry. And here's what I was talking about, that Adobe is sometimes very aggressive. You have to be cautious of that. All right, going back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Now, you can use PowerPoint in much the same way that you use Google Slides. The thing is, Google Slides is available because you're a student with us. Automatically, it's one of the apps you have with your student email, but we don't have access to PowerPoint. If you happen to have PowerPoint and you're comfortable using it, that is awesome. You can use it exactly the same way you do Google Slides. I tried to link to it, but it won't do it because it's not an internet source. But you can see it's the exact same type of buttons. You can play around with the background. You can play around with inserting photos. You can play around with the size. All those kind of things can still be done the exact same way on PowerPoint. So you're welcome to use that. The other program I wanted to mention really quick is a program like Canva. I use Canva all the time. I find it so, so, so helpful for creating these kind of documents because there's so many nice graphics and colors and styles kind of already set up. The thing is, as far as I understand, I am able to invite you to a class and give you access to Canva, but it is available for free. There is a bunch of professional things. Like if you see a little crown, the crown means it's going to cost you money, so don't pick that. But I used this thing for ages before work bought the thing, and I did all sorts of work on it without needing to buy anything. So it's fine. Let me just kind of see if I can click on it and pull it up for you guys. Oh, I can't I'm not trying to download anything. I'm just trying to pick it up. Okay, so once again, sometimes that happens. Let me see if I can pull it up. I always can on my own computer, but sometimes the work ones or the one in the studio. Here we go. Okay, so I kind of made a little document ahead of time. And okay, so I can add new slides by going down here. I can change the background color by here. There's ones I could pick. If I go to the little rainbow side, I can just make all sorts of colors, solids. I can pull this around. You can see I can pull it around here. Shoop. Gosh. I say I don't like the text color. I can change the text color. I'm gonna make it white so it stands out. That work. Man, okay. I can change the font. They have slightly different fonts available, but you can see here now. So if you look here, this one is a paid one, so don't pick that one. I can, because I've got the paid license through work. Okay, I can make it bigger, smaller, just like this, right? I can change the color of the text. You saw me do that. I could make it bold. I could make it italicized. I could underline it. I can also create tiny boxes, just like I did with Google Slides. Where's my time? Sorry, check out my time. Here I would do it this way. I'd hit text, hit this, and then I would kind of put it the way I want. And I would go in and just kind of start typing like, here is my text. Okay. I can add photos. I've found I pretty safely can just kind of like, if the photo's on my screen, I can copy it and stick it on here. But you could also, there's a way to do it where you put it into your computer and you save it and pull it up. But I just find clicking on it with a snip and save or clicking on the copy works just as well for me. I can add more pages. Oh, templates. Templates are really cool, I gotta say. If I go up to design and hit templates, all sorts of things will come up. I put photography in because that seemed to get the best things. Photography. And some examples came up. So I'm going to grab a new page here. So if I click on this, so I originally actually already grabbed one of these pages just to kind of show you, because it's already kind of set up in a really cool fashion. So I could do that as kind of a starter. It's really helpful if you're the kind of person that's not feeling super creative. Here's another one. I grabbed one of these pages already. This one I didn't like because everything overlaps and I felt like there wasn't a lot of room for me to explain things. And they don't all do that, but you kind of got to pull them up and look at them to find out for sure. Right? So this one, there's like a photograph per page, which I don't like. I want ones where I can get multiple pictures. So like here, there's room for 3 or 4 pictures. Now, if I was using this, if I click on this and go up to the garbage can, oh, there's a way to do that where it doesn't take the whole thing, but I can do it that way. The other way, okay, let me see if it'll come up. Let me, no. Okay, wait, hang on. No. So there's supposed to be a way to get rid of the picture as well as get rid of the background. Usually there should be like a little frame. Hang on, let me see the frame. Hang on. See if this can work. Nope. Elements. Frames. Okay, that's weird. Oh, okay. So if I put this there, then what I could also do then later is grab a photo and, okay, hang on. Person. Okay, awesome. I want to grab her. Now, if I want to, there you go. See, if I line her up with that, all of a sudden it goes in there. Now, with a square, it's not so cool, not so different. But there are sorts of, hang on. There are some very cool frames, right? There's circles, there's stars, there whatever. Like, so if I grabbed a star one, I could stick her in the star too, I think. Oh, it won't do it right now because she's already on the background. I'd have to take it apart. But that's another way you could use. Here's another one. I like this one a lot. This one has got a great layout for you to be able to put stuff in. Again, if you don't like the text, change it. See if I can make it work one more time. There we go. So delete the image. So now that is a spot where I could put my own photograph in. Now, if I said delete, let me do it. If I say delete the grid, oh, so that you don't want to do, okay? Now, you can also just start with a completely blank screen and just put whatever you want on there. Some people would feel very confident about that. Some people would not feel confident at all. Now, same thing. Once you're all finished, oh, don't go to File. You're going to go to Share. And you'd hit Download. Now, PDF Standard is probably the best one for us. And you'd hit Download. It takes a little while. It'll show up here on this little arrow when it's finished. And you would then click on that, save it to your computer, send it to me in an email. Okay, so this is the photo journal. I think it's a very cool little project. I think you can have a lot of fun with it. I hope you enjoy it. And we'll tackle the information paragraph tomorrow. Okay, if you have any questions, give me a phone call. I'm here for a good half an hour or so, and I'd be happy to answer questions, or call me tomorrow morning and I can help you out with whatever you need. Thank you so much, and see you guys tomorrow.